Hello everybody and welcome back to Operation Logistics, where we are still working on road generation, but we have made some significant progress. At this point, we need to do our rotation for our sharp corners, and we also need to create the correct type of tile for our road entrances. Like, for example, right here, you can see that this needs to be a non-sharp corner, but it is not. So we need to do that. But first things first, let's do our sharp corners. So, I do think at this point we can safely get rid of all of this commented out garbage. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now, as far as our sharp corners go, we need to determine the rotation here. So sharp corners, there are a few assumptions that we can make. Sharp corners will, like regular corners, have 6 possible rotations: 60 degrees, 120 degrees, 180 degrees, 240 degrees, 300 degrees, and 0 degrees. So those will be the corners. However, we can also make the assumption, because this will always be true, that the entry point and the destination point will always be right next to each other. So let's go ahead and start scripting this with these assumptions in place. So we know that this one and this one are the default 0 rotation. So let's go ahead and make that one first. I'm going to go ahead and do this again. And I'm actually going to bump this over slightly and try to embiggen this. Let's just maximize this on play, actually. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. Okay, so now we can kind of see. And with that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy over as well, so we can see this a little bit better. So like I was saying, these two tiles here are definitely 100% going to always be a 0 rotation. So let's go ahead and just, I don't know, make 6 hard-coded things here. Like, realistically, we know for a fact that they're always going to be right next to each other. So, I mean, we could just do it that way. For example, if... actually, do we want to just basically copy and paste this? I think that's more complicated than we need, realistically. So, if our previous position dot... Actually, we should do approximately equal. If approximately equal, previous hex, or rather previous position dot x, and then subhexes I dot transform dot position dot x. If those are approximately equal, or same thing for the next position. So I'm just going to copy this, paste this right here, and go for next position. So if either of our positions are approximately equal, if either position.x is approximately equal, we know that we are vertical in some way. Okay, so if either of those are true, then like before, we kind of need to determine which one. Or do we? Well, yes. Well, actually, no, we don't. Because looking at this, we know for a fact that, for example, if we're the top here, we know that it will be here or here. So we know that the Z position, if we're vertical, will always be higher than our current position, because we're going to be exiting either here or here with a sharp corner. Same thing down here, we'll be exiting either here or here with a sharp corner. And then we'll just have to deal with this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. So, I think in that case, we can just make basically the same assumption that we mistakenly made with the regular corners, and say, if previous position.z is greater than subhexes I.transform.position.z, or next position dot z is greater than subhexes I.transform.position.z. And actually, this should probably be and, because it's guaranteed to both be the same if this is a vertical position, because we know it's going to be here or here, or here or here, which is going to be the same in terms of greater than or less than for Z position. So that's fine. So if it's greater than, then we know that we are here, and we know that we are either here or here. So if we are there, then we can check our non-approximately equal one. So we need to determine that. So like before, we need to go through and say, right here, we need a vector 3 not entering position. We'll need that again, equals vector3.0, just to stop a potential compiler yelling at us. So we need to determine which is our not entering position. And realistically, I mean, technically we don't need the entering from top, I think, because we can determine that with our assumptions here. So we can very easily then just copy this and say if approximately equal previous position dot x, and ditch this for right now. If our previous position is the one that we're entering with, I think we do not need the extra parenthesis over here. So if our previous position is the one that's approximately equal, then our not entering position equals next position. And then we can just simply do an else. This is a simpler version of what we created before because we can make the assumption that we're always going to be next to our other one. So not entering position here will need to be previous position. So we now know which of our positions is the not entering position, which is good to know, because now we can simply check if not entering position.z is greater than subhexes i.transform.position.z. And I guess we will go ahead and do the entering from top, won't we? Because, let's see here, we need to see... Yeah, we're going to need to do it. So, bool entering from top. So, at this point, we need to say, in here, if... Okay, so... not entering position is next position. We know that for sure. So if previous position dot z is greater than subhexes I dot transform dot position dot z. So if previous position, the one that is entering from top, is greater than, or well, the one that is entering, if it's greater than, then entering from top equals true. Else, enter, there we go, equals false. So we know that for a fact. And then we can go ahead and do the same thing here and say if previous position, instead of that we'll go for if next position, because we know for a fact that that's the one that's entering from either the top or the bottom. So now we know if we are entering from the top or entering from the bottom. And we also know which of our positions are not entering. So I did decide to go for all of that information because that does tend to help. So if our not entering position.z is greater than subhexes i.transform.position.z, so we now know that we are entering, or rather that we are not entering, from a position that is either here or here. We know that for a fact. And we need to determine a couple of things. We've already determined... Yeah, okay. So we know that we are definitely here or here. That's what we know right now. We're one of those two tiles. We also know, because of that, that we're entering from top. So actually this was entirely irrelevant. That's an assumption we can make. So, we can assume, since they have to be next to each other, and that one is at the top or bottom, that since this is towards the top we are entering from top. That's a safe assumption, because if we're here, it can enter from here or here for a sharp corner, but this isn't a vertical tile, so we know for a fact it has to be here. So we need to determine if we are here or here at this point, and we do that with an x comparison. So if not entering position dot x is greater than subhexes I dot transform dot position dot x, so we know for a fact at that point that we are in this tile and we are exiting in this tile. So we know exactly what we need. Let's check here. What is our rotation going to be? Well, our current rotation is 0, obviously. But this needs to be, let's see, what is this? That would be 180. This would be 240? Yes. So we know for a fact that rot equals new vector 3, 0f, 240f, 0f. Okay. However, if the not entering position is less than, so we can just simply do an else call, we can assume that this is the tile that we're going for. We know that for an absolute fact. So instead of 240, we will simply subtract 60 and do 180 degrees. So rot equals new vector 3, 0f, 180f, 0f. Okay, so there's that. We now have this on the vertical, so when we are exiting vertically, we know that this is going to be fine. We have 2 of our 4 positions done. However, if not entering position.z is less than, we need an else statement here. No, Windows. Now is not the time. Go away. Sheesh. Every time when I'm recording, Windows is like, do you want to update now? No, Windows. Go away. Okay, so if not entering position.z is less than our current position.z, so if we are down on this side, then we need to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and copy all of that, including the comment. We can assume since they have to be next to each other and that one is at the top or bottom, that since this is towards the bottom, we are now entering from bottom. Okay, so if not entering position.x is greater than, so if we are over here, we know for a fact we are this tile and this tile at this point. So this is vector 3.0. If it compiles, there we go. So yeah, we're definitely vector 3.0 here. So I'm just going to change this. I'm not going to even create a new vector. I'm just going to reference vector 3.0. There we go. Otherwise, we know that we are over here, which I believe is 60 degrees. Because we know we're exiting here. Yes, that is 60 degrees. Okay, so we have 0, 60, 180, 240. We need 120 and 300, which is here and here and here and here. So we know that this approximately equal call will return false if we are in either of those cases. So we can just go ahead and do an else statement here. And if we don't have an approximately equal one on the x-axis to our current hex, then we know for a fact we can assume that they are stacked on each other. Let's just figure out which side they're on. And by that I mean, we know for a fact that it's this one and this one, or this one and this one. It can't be this one and this one, or this one and this one, because that would be a straight tile, not a sharp corner. So we just need to find out which side they're on, and just have our 2 rotations. So let's go ahead and do that. If, and it doesn't actually matter which one, let's just use not entering position, because we don't actually have not entering position, but it doesn't matter which one because they will be the same on the x-axis, essentially. So let's just use previous. So if previous position.x is less than subhexes I dot transform dot, no, I can't type, transform dot position dot x, we know for a fact at that point that it's here. And if that's the case, it needs to be at 120, as you can see. So we know for a fact at that point it needs to be at 120. 120. And then we know that it's not less than, so we can just simply do an else. No, not particle animator. I know you're trying to be helpful, Visual Studio, but that's not what we need right now. Oh boy. So instead of that, this needs to be what, 300 degrees? Yes. I think. Well, that's 120. Yeah, 300 should be right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And that should be all 6 cases for the road corner sharp. Let's see if that worked. Now, of course, we aren't doing intersections yet. That's something that we'll need to work on. Let's see. Okay. Well, the sharp corners look good. This regular corner doesn't, though. Let's take a quick look at what's going on with that. Because that definitely should be working, but that might be a case that we didn't consider. It's at 0, 60, 0. It is coming in from the top and then down to the left. So let's take a quick look at what's going on there. We know that we are down here if approximately equal. So we know that we are in this section because we know that it's straight up. So entering from top should be true. And our not entering position should be here, which is down, and so it's z negative and x negative, essentially. So we know for a fact that we are entering from top, so that is true. So if not entering position.x is less than, that is true. If entering from top, that is true. It should have returned new vector 3, 0f, 120f, 0f. So it should be 120 degrees. However, entering from top must be false. It must think it's entering from bottom, because that's the only way it can return 60 degrees. So why is it trying to enter from bottom? Well, let's take a look here. So we know for a fact that this is the previous and this is the next, because this is the end of the road. So previous position is the one that it should return true for. If approximately equal next position.x and next position.z is greater than, that should definitely have returned false. So if approximately equal previous position.x subhexes i.transform.position.x. So if previous position and our current position are approximately equal, which they should be, and previous position.z is greater than, entering from top equals true, not entering position equals next position. So that should be true. Okay, I'm going to... I have a small theory here. I'm not 100% sure that that's going to work, and we might run into this further down the road, but I just want to make absolutely sure that we're not overwriting with this. Because we run this check, and that's great, but then we instantly run this check, and that could theoretically overwrite it. So I'm going to do a quick bool has calculated entry equals false. That's going to be false. So instead of doing entering from top equals false, I'm just going to get rid of this. Now that I think about it, get rid of this, and then just do an else if. I think we don't need this, because if this is true, then entering from top equals true, not entering position equals next position. Else if this is true, entering from top equals true, not entering position equals previous position, else entering from top equals false. But then we don't know what our not entering position is, which is a problem. So we need to run a check down in here, because, well, if neither previous or next position is entering from top, yeah, that is correct. Yeah, we need to know what our not entering position is in this case. So, we need to go ahead and say our not entering position would be something along the lines of if approximately equal next, actually I'm going to go with previous position, no, not previous hex, previous position dot x subhexes I, come on Visual Studio, there we go, dot transform dot position dot x. So if our previous position is the one that's approximately equal, because we know one is approximately equal, otherwise we wouldn't even be here. So if our previous position is the one that's approximately equal, not entering position equals next position. Else, not entering position equals previous position. Okay. So that fixes a small problem that we had where neither one of them was entering from top, and we weren't actually setting our position, and it was, I think, assuming the position was vector 3.0. Let's double check that we're not doing that up here. Yeah, we're not doing that up here because we can make some safer assumptions. Okay. Now we can't get this exact road again, but we can run a few road generations and see if we see a similar issue. That all looks good. That looks great. Fantastic. Excellent. That's good. Yep. Looks all good. Oh, that one's just gorgeous. Okay. Yeah. So we are very, very close at this point to having our first road generation working perfectly. That looks great. I'm super happy about that. So the only thing we need to do now is we need to have our proper types of roads spawning at our entryways. Because as you can see here, this isn't right. These need to be regular corners. Now, the question is, can they ever be anything other than a regular corner or a straight line? And the answer here is no, because we are assuming that if this hex grid were to continue, so we've got one here, and one here, yeah? We can assume that if the hex grid were to continue, we are exiting here, because that's where the connection here is. So the connection is there, and so it's here, and so it needs to be a regular corner, but some of them also work for straight lines, like for example, this one. This one works as a straight line. So we know that our previous position is here, and our next position would determine whether we're a road corner or a straight line. So let's go ahead and go up to our road entries, which is here. Now we don't necessarily know that this is a road prefab. We don't know that at all. So we need to determine if it's a straight line or not. So we need to get our previous hex, or rather our next hex only, and our next position. So let's go ahead and say, actually I'm just going to do vector 3 next position equals our road index plus 1 dot transform dot position. So we know where our next position is. It can only be 3 potential locations, and our previous position is basically going to be, I mean, our previous position, how are we going to calculate that? I think we can just make our assumption in the code as we go forward. So if our next position is, if I pull up the hex grid here, come on. There we go. Oh, argument is out of range. Right. That would happen. So we need to say something along the lines of, let's do a vector 3. Vector 3, instead of next position, I'm going to call it other position. Because there's only going to be one other position. So other position right here. Okay. It is time to put a cut in here, though. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, I'm going to go ahead and comment this out for now, so that this code is actually functional. So next episode, I think we're just going to go ahead and work on getting our road entries properly spawning. See you all then.